And we are live. Welcome, everyone. This is your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. In a few moments, I will do a sound check. First of all, this channel is proudly sponsored by Inkforged. It is a fantasy tabletop RPG, highly detailed but very easy to understand. You can imbue your weapons and gear with magically charged ink. You will find the link in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored, and I will talk about the Red Room in a few moments. This channel is also proudly sponsored by Dead Tree Studios, the publishers and developers of Dames of Asstoria, a tabletop RPG where you play as monster girls, experiencing high adventure in a world that doesn't fully accept them. They have recently released Daughters of Lamb. This is a pay what you want tabletop RPG available in their website. You play as cybernetic nuns with guns that look for the pieces of their AI god. You will find that in their website. Like I said, the links will be in the description and in the pinned comment. This channel is also proudly sponsored by the Red Room Publishing. Please check out their store for exclusive tabletop RPG products. They have recently released New Flesh, a future noir tabletop RPG where cyberpunk meets biological horror. You will find the link in the description and in the pinned comment as well. And before we continue, let's see. Yes, let me show you this little clip from Red Room Publishing. Uncharted Seas. Here we go.
The choice is yours in this epic role-playing game of exploration and adventure. Uncharted Seas. Set sail for adventure.
Yeah, so definitely check it out. Welcome Beyond Fantasy. Hades, yeah, cybernetic nuns. It's pay what you want. Beyond Fantasy, pay what you want. So definitely download it. You can download it from the website. You can download it from DriveThruRPG. I don't know if it's available in other places, but it's pretty much free. They're giving it to you for free. And so yes, tonight I am talking about emulating characters, player characters, non-player characters in solo tabletop RPGs or cooperative RPGs as well. As many of you know, you can pretty much let me check the sound. Tabletop RPGs or cooperative RPGs. Sounds good, right? Sounds good. So yes, any solo tabletop RPG can also be played as a cooperative experience, at least in the great majority of cases. So I wanted to give you some examples on how you can emulate player characters and non-player characters. Sometimes you want to play those solo RPGs as a game master with emulated player characters, with personalities, agendas, objectives, so that it actually feels as if you're playing with someone alive, right? And some other times, I would say in the majority of cases, a lot of people want to play as player characters with an emulated game master. And of course, this also means that you have to carry out emulation for the non-player characters. And so let me give you a few examples on how this can be done. I have already mentioned when it comes to combat, because combat is a bit more simple, at least not as complex as some social situations can get when it comes to the responses or reactions from the non-player characters. Combat is a bit more intuitive. You have the complete minimalist descriptive combat system. Let me see if I can wrestle with the AI. There we go. The minimalist descriptive combat system. This is a very simple, just a few pages. This is from Ken Wickham. Like I said, in DriveThruRPG, Ken Wickham has so many products for solo RPGs. That's Ken Wickham, WICKHAM, Wickham. Ken Wickham. And this little pamphlet can help you determine if the opponent is attacking your head, your thorax, your left arm, your abdomen, your legs. Mm, what sort of damage is inflicted or a type of attack if he is using a slashing weapon. Maybe it's a slice, maybe he's trying to sever an artery or an organ. If he's using crushing attacks, maybe he's trying to pulverize something, or maybe he just wants to bash you on the head. If it's a piercing attack, maybe he wants to poke you, like some safe pokes from a distance, trying to gauge your ability. Let me see, Beyond Fantasy, send me your printer. Such awesome quality ink. Yeah, sometimes I'm surprised because it's one of those, the ink should already be out, but it keeps on printing. So I'm guessing I'm printing with the ink at the very bottom of the toner. So, but it's still really good. And you can determine also the severity of the attacks, some modifiers. You can also carry out hand strikes, leg strikes, other strikes such as headbutts, spear hands. You also have a table for grappling. Beyond Fantasy, since you are into catch wrestling, I think you will also appreciate this. You have an entire section dedicated to grappling the arm, the leg, the abdomen, the head. So really good document overall. You also have a section determining butt strikes and pistol whips. And shooting, maybe it blasts an artery or an organ, or maybe he's just hitting the surface of something, of your vehicle or your weapon. So it's all about your interpretation, taking a look at the context and using these simplified tables. Really good document. Again, in Ken Wickham's Drive for RPG store. Moving on from that. But you could be thinking, well, that's great for physical combat and combat situations, except for spells. Although you could interpret some things like that applied to spells, perhaps instead of a slash. Yes, definitely get it. It's very affordable. Well, I got it when it was on sale. It was like $2.50, I think. $2.50 when it was on sale. Normally, I think it's $5 or $7. I don't remember. But when it comes to magic, yes, you could perhaps handle some of the firearm results as if they were magic missile or fireball. Now, moving on from that, we also have the Game Master's Apprentice deck. Let me try to get it into into focus. I hope you can see some of the results. So yes, with that document, it's basically a set of cards. And these cards, of course, you can print them as cards, but you can do it like me on sheets. And as you can see here, I numbered. This is supposed to be a 1. This is a 1. I numbered the pages, 20 pages in total. So I roll a d20, and based on the result, I turn to that page. And then because you have, let me see. Because you have 6 cards per page, you only need to roll a d6 to determine what card you're getting. And each card has so many results. Just take a look at this front card. The first card, it says no, yes, bad, even, good, likely odds. It gives you the results of various dice rolls. Maybe you hear the clank of chain, or you see a wizened and wary figure. Your foot got caught on a tripwire. There is a sickly sweet decay, of a smell of sweetly sick decay. There are also tables, a section for belongings. That's totally an S, not a 1 at all. And maybe it concerns domestic papers or recipes, schedules, and maybe the name is Janek or Anjali. Maybe a guild requires aid. Maybe the virtue is chastity, the vice is envy, the location is the dungeon. So let's say that you're playing a solo role-playing game. You are playing as a player character. You have a game master emulator, and you encounter a non-player character. What is that non-player character going to talk about? Maybe you greet the non-player character, you say hello or whatever, and now you make your role to determine what meanings, what topics the non-player character is going to talk about using this same card. Maybe you make the roll, and based on the context, for example, if it's a guard and you see the belongings, it says domestic papers, right? That makes you think perhaps the guard asks you for papers. So the guard says, "Halt, stranger, I need to see your papers before you can proceed into the city," right? Because you've got the result of papers. But what if it's not a guard? What if it's your neighbor? And you take a look, and it says a guild requires aid. So maybe it's not a guild, but maybe your neighbor requires help, requires aid. So, and what sort of aid with what? You see the result, and it says sickly sweet decay. Maybe your neighbor tells you, "Oh man, you're not going to believe this. I was going to prepare a feast, and my food is rotten." He comments that, and maybe you can say, "Oh well, what did you need? Maybe we can go to the store real quick. I'll come with you." Or I have an extra slice of beef in my fridge. Maybe you want to use that, or depending on the context, right? And so it could be pretty much anything according to your interpretation, to what sort of character you are role playing as, and the non-player character you are interacting with. So all of these results, and they help so much in not only social situations but also in combat situations. If it's combat, you have some inspiration here, like for example the clank of a chain. If the enemy has some sort of chain attack, swinging a battle chain or something, that could be the sort of attack that he is using, right? There is also the result of your foot caught on a tripwire. Maybe the enemy is going to attempt a trip attack. He's going to try to drop you prone. So just from a single card, look at all of the interpretations that can be applied to both combat and social situations. Moving on to another document, you could also use a simple oracle like the Living Oracle. The Living Oracle. This is pretty much a set of yes or no results. So if you encounter, again, let's go back to the neighbor situation. You step out of your apartment and you encounter your neighbor. Perhaps he went outside of his apartment at the same time, and you think, I look at the neighbor to see if he's in a good mood. You make your roll, and maybe it's most likely but, right? And the first concept that comes to your mind, the neighbor smiles, but looks at his watch and speaks, "Oh no, I'm going to be late for work." You see? And that's the thing. You can use all sorts of oracles, all of those yes or no results. But it is much better to have random words, concepts generated through the use of cards or other oracles. So, solo tabletop RPGs, whether you are emulating non-player characters or player characters, you can always use a yes or no system, but it takes a bit longer, right? It's not as simple as just rolling 2 or 3 random concepts, and there you have it. You have an entire conversation springing forth from those concepts. Now, when it comes to emulating player characters, if they enter a room, typical Dungeons and Dragons situation, they enter a room, and you know that that room has traps because you are role-playing. You're playing the role of a game master, or rather the entire world. You are playing the role of the entire world. You are a game master playing with emulated player characters. In that case, we could also go back to the card that I was mentioning. and you think applying to the context of going of the player characters going into a room that is potentially trapped. You see the clank of a chain. If the trap can be disabled or neutralized through the use of some sort of chain, or the trap itself has a chain as part of the device or the contraption, perhaps the player characters are going to attempt something related to that chain. Maybe your foot caught on a tripwire means that the party of adventurers is going to be quite wary of not getting their feet caught on tripwires or pits or whatnot. So that's how you can determine some things using these concepts. Now, beyond fantasy, before we move further ahead, all of this clear or well explained, or would you like me to elaborate more on some of these examples? In the meantime, let me organize a few things here. And while you are thinking about that, when it comes to using yes or no oracles, when the party of player characters enters a room that is potentially trapped, you can use your yes or no. Makes sense. Okay, perfect. You can make use of the yes or no oracle as well if you want to. You could be thinking as a game master, is the party of adventurers going to search for traps when they go in? You know, when you are running a game as a game master, you have that inner monologue trying to think what the player characters are going to be attempting. So maybe you make your roll, and perhaps the result is better not tell you now. So this is a very nuanced way of interpreting the result. The player characters discuss between them if it is wise to search for traps inside that room. Perhaps they even trigger something by accident, right? And you have like a conversation going. You could make a roll to see who mentions this. Maybe you have a fighter, a thief, a cleric, and a wizard. You make a d4 roll to determine who mentions this, and you end up with the fighter, and the fighter speaks. Is it wise to enter and search for traps in this room? We may end up triggering something by accident. You see? But as I always say, the yes or no oracle, it should be used only for very straightforward instances. It is much better to employ the cards, tables, or any other oracle that provides you with perhaps one, two, or three concepts. Now let's move on to the Tricube Tales. Tricube Tales solo rules. Am I getting it? Tricube Tales solo rules. Remember that these are free to download. These are free. When it comes to the Tricube Tales solo rules, you have complex questions results. You only roll 2 6-sided dice. Only need to roll those dice, and maybe you obtain the result of control, or maybe rejection, perhaps rivalry. Going again to the let's see. Yeah, I can see the top of the page. Yeah. Well, you can see the results here. But like I said, this document is pretty much free to download. So don't hesitate to download this and check the results, because they are very good. If the player characters go into the room that is perhaps, like I said, potentially trapped, how is the party of adventurers going to react to that, right? Maybe you describe the room as a game master in this solo session with emulated player characters, and you describe that there is a fountain at the center of the room, but instead of normal water, it is producing blood. It smells like blood. It looks like blood. It is most definitely blood. So you make a couple of rolls to see how the party of adventurers are going to interact with that room. Perhaps you obtain the result of jealousy and exposure. Perhaps there is a bickering between the party of adventurers. Perhaps the thief doesn't want his lack of expertise in disarming traps and whatnot, or finding traps, to be exposed. and he's jealous of the effectiveness of the other party members. So you can use that interpretation as the thief speaks. How you don't expect me to search for traps in this room, right? Let the wizard cast a spell to see if there is some sort of trap. My skills are better suited for more specific situations. And let's see, Beyond Fantasy says, yeah, download the preview on Retro RPG. The creator provides it for free. If you like it, feel free to support the author. Exactly. So all of these complex questions, if you want to handle social situations, you can make your roll and maybe you obtain conflict technology. The participants in the fight are going to use their highest technology available, perhaps a crossbow, perhaps some sort of magical item or device. I really love the Tricube Tales solo rules. You can generate those random scenes. And if you are starting a conversation with a non-player character or a player character emulated, there could be a conversation, right, between not only between the player characters themselves, but also between a non-player character and a player character. They are in a city, so here you have urban locations. What are they going to talk about? You make your roll. The hotel or inn, depending on the city, on the time context as well. So you can generate events, people, locations to serve as the topics of conversation that the player characters or non-player characters that you are emulating talk about. And that's how you end up with those surprises that normally you would only expect from a living game master. If you are playing as a player character and the game master that you are emulating, that is using your Mythic Game Master emulator or Tricube Tales emulator, you roll to see what that non-player character is going to talk about. You even have a table for names, arcane spells, generic twists, voyages, weather, easily applied to sci-fi, to pretty much anything. In fact, I had the idea or the notion that this Tricube Tales emulator also had like a sci-fi section. Perhaps it's in a new version. Who knows? Either way, any of these things can be applied to, yes, because all of the results can be applied to modern or medieval type of situations. Moving on from that, we have the one-page solo engine. Beyond Fantasy, if you want an even more simple generator, you have the one-page solo engine. This is also available in Retro RPG. It's a single page. You have ways of setting the scene, altering the scene. This is more suitable for Powered by the Apocalypse RPGs, but it works with any RPG out there. You also have an oracle to determine the focus of an action, perfect for combat. What sort of combat action is the non-player character or player character going to take? Maybe he's seeking to protect. You draw two results, and you obtain the combination of seek protect. Maybe that means that combatant is seeking to protect one of the more frail party members, like the wizard or the thief. But maybe you obtain the result of harm command. Maybe that character is going to attack what he considers to be who he considers to be the leader of the enemy party. You can also, there are so many things that you can determine with just this little sheet of paper. You have objectives, eliminate the threat, perfect for combat situations, learn the truth for social situations. One-page solo engine, I have Dungeon World. I haven't played it in a while. Well, this is perfect for that. But like I said, for many tabletop many tabletop RPGs in general, you have rewards, identity, concerning outlaws, drifters, tradesmen. You even have dungeon crawlers and hex crawlers here with typical areas, transitional areas. But because it is just a single page, you won't have a single, a table or various tables. giving you very specific results, such as forests, marshes, mountains. You have the skeleton here, but you need to come up with those results. So it's better to supplement this one with some other tables, in my opinion. It is not absolutely necessary, but it speeds up gameplay so that you don't get stuck like, what will it be? Hex scrolls are amazing, and Beyond Fantasy, I hope we get some people for the campaign that I am planning. Who knows? Who knows if we will find some people? We shall see. And we also have the terrain randomizer. Terrain randomizer. The terrain randomizer, it can help you not only to set up the battlefield, but here in this context of emulating player characters and non-player characters, you can determine the topics or subjects that they broach, that they bring out during a conversation. Perhaps they speak about a mysterious mental effect, or maybe they talk about a valuable object. So it's all about, again, your interpretation based on the context. So I also recommend this generator, of course. Then we have, of course, probably the best document from Ken Wickham that I mentioned before. Oh, before we get into that one, we also have this one, the character engine oracles. Character engine oracles. So the character engine oracles, they are all about determining what the non-player character or player character is going to attempt in combat or in social situations. You have your yes or no oracle, but you also have the motivation oracle. You can determine if the character is unmotivated, or perhaps that player character or non-player character that you are emulating has average interest. You can also determine the directness. Maybe the character takes a normal indirect approach, a bit complex but still sensible, perfect again for those rooms with traps. Instead of a normal and their indirect approach could be perhaps using your 10-foot pole to poke the ground to see if there are traps, or poking the ceiling. You also have a curiosity oracle. Perhaps the character is completely obsessed, an unhealthy level of interest. That character wants to get into the room and manipulate, tinker around with everything within the room. You can also determine the aggression, the cooperation, tactics. You can also understand if the question has to do with mystery, drama, if the character is an agent of chaos, or he is more standard in his approach, or orthodox. All of those things are incredibly valuable for solo non-player character or player character emulation. Now, the solo play. What is this? ABS solo game engine. Ah, yes, this is like a shortened version. This is like the how you say beginner friendly version of Ken Wickham's products. This is the ABS solo game engine. Let me get that over here. ABS solo game engine. ABS from Ken Wickham. This one is, like I said, like a very summarized, very beginner-friendly version of the more advanced oracles from Ken Wickham. You can you have a yes or no solo decision. Options such as the truth, determining the truth. What if you encounter a non-player character and he has a friendly attitude, but later on there are some suspicious things about that character based on the results of the adventure? Let's say, how do you print so many pages? There's a lot of paper. Yeah, throughout the years, right? I prefer to have things in paper, because sometimes when you move the PDF around, it's a bit annoying. I don't know. I'm very tactile. I want to flip through the pages, although I still use digital documents as well. But You could determine if the attitude of that non-player character is true. Is he actually friendly? Because since you have met him, you have been ambushed so many times. Maybe he's actually in league with the bad guys and he's handing out information to them. So you can determine if his friendship or his attitude is true or partially true. Maybe he is friendly, but he's being threatened. Like in Resident Evil 1, Barry Burton. Barry is a good guy, but Wesker had his wife and daughter as hostages. So he was being forced in helping him. Mm. You can also determine the solo priority and direction if the party of adventurers is going to move north or forward or south or backward, east, etc. You can determine the stages of various processes like planning stages, stages of grief. Let's see, my printer only prints out 25 pages before it runs out of ink by comparison. Yeah, and it's so expensive to refill the ink. Where I live, it is more affordable to purchase the entire toner than to have it refilled. It is that bad. Mm. So many good oracles to determine yes or no problems, solutions, experimentation, hypotheses, and you even have guides. Really good document. Remember the name, it's ABS Solo Game Engine. Oh, sorry. ABS Solo Game Engine from Ken Wickham. Now, the Sotoplay game and writing tools. This document is a monster. That's Sotoplay as with an R. Like Sotoplay. Sotoplay has everything you would ever need. This is perhaps one of the most complete yet portable Game Master emulators out there. And of course, this allows you to emulate the behavior and actions of non-player characters and emulated player characters. There's just so much. You can determine things related to the opinion, the size of a place, the age, the color, the origin, the material, locations. Maybe something's murky, maybe something is dark. If you're having a conversation with a non-player character, that is, if you're a player character, if you are playing the game as a player character and you start talking with a non-player character, maybe you obtain the result of playful, depending on the game. Let's say a modern setting in college. Now they invite you to play football, playful, right? But what if it's another result in a different context? Maybe you're playing a sci-fi game on a distant world, and you obtain the result of gargantuan. They speak that there is this gargantuan alien roaming about the planet. You must be careful. You can determine items, twists. This is great for non-player characters to determine if they are on your side or not. Or maybe you're fighting against an enemy. Sounds awesome for Slug Blaster. I can imagine, based on what you have said of Slug Blaster, sounds perfect for that. And the twist generator. Maybe someone has a different morality. What if you have been fighting a villain? You're clashing with the villain, and suddenly you obtain this result. There are some other results that make you think maybe this villain is not so evil after all. And you make this roll and he has a different morality. It turns out that the villain is fighting you because he thinks that you are the bad guy. So you obtain those plot twists. So many incredible plot twists. Maybe someone doesn't know the path. Maybe a new timeline begins. Maybe objects reveal ultimate power. Maybe there is terror unleashed. All of this could serve as topics for conversations between the non-player characters and player characters. And when it comes to combat, you can apply many other things. But here you can determine the mood, the emotion, the theme, motivations. Maybe someone is focused on the truth. Maybe someone is focused on analyzing things. Maybe someone is looking for food. Maybe you can also generate animals. Perhaps you encounter a ranger or a scout, and the scout, you determine what is the scout. You think, what is the scout going to talk about, right? You make a roll and you obtain fur. The scout is looking for beasts to collect the fur and sell it. In combat, if you're fighting animals, the closest serve, perhaps claw. You obtain the result of claw, and the animal is going to attack with a claw rather than a bite. Or if you are playing, if the non-player character is a werewolf, or the emulated player character is a werewolf, you obtain the result of claw. He's going to attack with claws instead of biting. You can also generate humans. This is perfect to generate non-player characters or player characters on the go. Maybe you find an individual with honey-colored skin, with round lips, of average height, with light green colors of his eyes, with a body shape that is square. You can determine everything: the brow shape, the eye color, the nose shape, the height, the lip shape, every single thing. You can determine it with this human generator table. Incredible. You can determine encounters, setting details of importance, determining the quality of humans, the body shape, the social behavior. You can even determine the reproduction cycle. All of that serves as topics between the non-player characters and player characters. Overall, the solo play, it is just a treasure trove. Just this solo play alone. But if you really want to go super deep, super nuanced, super complex, you definitely want to use the solo adventuring toolkit. Ah, you have seen it before. I hope it is focused. Solo adventuring toolkit. It's a bit difficult. How to say? Yeah, it's a bit difficult because of the glare of the light. But the Flextail Solo Adventuring Toolkit, mm, this has everything. At the end, you have an appendix with results to generate social and combat interactions with emulated player characters or non-player characters. I would recommend using the social results when the emulated party of adventurers is going into a room with traps. So let's say that they are moving through a dark tunnel with cobwebs, like Indiana Jones 3, The Last Crusade. How are they going to move through that corridor, right? You make your roll, and maybe you obtain the result of diplomacy. The party of adventurers decide that it's much better to find the being running the dungeon before going through that corridor, to see if you can convince him or telling them how they can move through that corridor, or if that corridor is trapped. Maybe there are factions in the dungeon that know about that corridor, and through diplomacy you can find out how to avoid particular traps. Or maybe you obtain the result of gather info. You could also use a yes or no oracle with this, because if they want to move through a tunnel or corridor and perhaps it is trapped or with some hazard, gather info could be interpreted as they need to gather more information before moving through it, or that they want to gather information about the corridor or tunnel by searching the corridor. So you could make a yes or no roll. But if you want to go all out on the AI, because the solo adventuring toolkit has a very, like a summarized uh, rules light version of the social and combat outcomes, you could go for the Flex AI guidebook. Flex AI guidebook. Ah, The Flex AI guidebook. Let me see. Okay. All of this, all of this combat and social situation results. When it comes to combat, you divide the non-player characters or player characters by type. A barbarian could be a brute. A fighter could be a soldier. A wizard could be, depending on the type of wizard, you could be perhaps a lurker or artillery. Artillery wizards can be considered glass cannons. So an artillery, right? A thief could be a lurker. A ranger could be a skirmisher. You determine the type and you make the roll to see if during that particular combat round the character is going to attack with their main weapon, or if they're going to use their secondary weapon. Perhaps they have a sword, but sometimes they pull out a pistol. Maybe they're going to use an ability or an item, a maneuver. Maybe they want to flee. All of that can be determined. What about a Weird West cowboy? Exactly. A Weird West cowboy. Is that Weird West cowboy going to use a spell? He could be considered an artillery. If you think, or skirmisher, right? Cowboys are really good at shooting, and they also are usually accustomed to fighting with their fists as well. So you could consider that cowboy a skirmisher. You make rolls on the skirmisher table to determine what they are going to attempt during a particular combat round. And you can also use variations depending on how detailed you want the results to be. If the character has been wounded, there are tables for that. What action is that character going to take while being wounded? If the character has been ambushed, how is that character going to respond to the ambush? If the character has advantage over their opponent, how are they going to react? All of that is influenced with various degrees of results. Magic bullets, exactly. For a Weird West setting, magic bullets are pretty much, that's quite common for magical cowboys. Now, when it comes to social situations, you can divide the characters by type as well. Maybe the non-player character that you encounter is an ally. You have seen that non-player character before. He is an ally. Maybe he is an asset. Perhaps he is just like a worker there. You haven't talked to each other, but he's an asset to the place. Maybe he's your acquaintance, not exactly like a friend or ally. Welcome, Cantico. Welcome. But the acquaintance will react differently. Maybe the character that you encounter is an opponent. Maybe he is a bystander. So you first determine which sort of non-player character type you are handling, and then you make your rolls to see if they are going to engage with you using diplomacy, or if they are going to try to intimidate you. Maybe they are trying to sense your motive. Maybe they are going to mislead you, or they sound misleading. So every single player character or non-player character that you emulate can be divided into these different types. For example, let's say that you encounter a character that is considered an opponent. You have encountered an opponent. You can determine if the opponent is going to, it says here subject info, the result, but that could be the opponent trying to guess what you are doing here. Maybe he's a rival bounty hunter, rival adventurer, or whatever. And he starts questioning you. Hey, glad to see you, man. What are you doing here? You know, like very competitive, perhaps a bit snide. And you make your roll to see how that situation further develops. Maybe you respond with something, and based on the response, you make a roll on the particular table that leans a bit more towards specific outcomes. Maybe the opponent turns hostile. He starts attacking you. He wants to break your legs so that you don't capture the bounty before him. Or maybe he actually helps you. You obtain the result of help. And he actually, now you owe him, right? He gives you some piece of advice. Oh, you're looking for one-eyed Billy? Well, let me tell you, I actually saw him. I saw him an hour ago at the Old Bear Bar, and now you owe me because he's your opponent, he's your competitor, and now you know that the next time he's looking for information, you should give that player, perhaps that character, sorry, that emulated non-player character or player character information. So because now you owe him and you want to keep that relationship going, or maybe you want to betray him, you won't give him information at all. It's all up to you. Maybe the answer is grant a plot clue. Maybe he's just talking about some other things and mentions a tidbit of information that he is not aware of how valuable that information is, and now you have a clue for the bounty that you are both chasing, or potential bounties, right? So many tools. And for those that have just arrived in this video, I have mentioned so many generators, oracles, emulators to determine the attitude, the agenda, the approach of non-player characters and player characters as you emulate them. But now let's talk about some deeper processes. Let's say that you have all of your oracles, all of your tables, all of your emulators. You have everything. Everything. How do you actually apply it, right? It's all based on context. If they are entering a dangerous place, use that danger concept and apply it to any sort of response. If they are acting defensive, they are protecting themselves from that danger. If they are acting reckless, they are going straight into the source of the danger. Maybe the danger is a mob, an angry mob. Or maybe the danger is an environment full of lava. That means the character is going to move deep into the dangerous territory. What if the environment is tranquil or peaceful? All of the results are colored by that. If you obtain like a defensive response, because it is a peaceful environment, maybe they take actions to protect that city. They think, wow, this city is really nice. We should stay here for a while and carry out some quests and protect the people and help people here. And Canticle of Restlessness says, I just got my playing card deck, using it as an oracle for an opponent, drew Jack of Hearts. Mm-hmm. And it depends on the situation where that opponent is at, right? How the battle is proceeding. Or if it's like an opponent in a social encounter, it's a sort of debate, it could be. So now that Canticle mentions it, ex romantic interest. Wow, So that's a very interesting way of interpreting things. It could be that if it's a woman and a guy, or well, it could be other things, right? Maybe there's like a romantic tension going on, sort of a bardy kind of NPC, or maybe they are talking about their ex. You know how you always sometimes you talk to people and they start talking about their exes. So many interpretations from that simple prompt. Ex romantic interest is a non-player character your ex romantic interest, or going to speak about the ex, a friend of one's ex. Yeah, and all of those relationships. All of, oh, it's you, exactly. And when it comes to combat, ex romantic interest, it could be that suddenly in the middle of battle, one of the enemies mentions, I actually know your ex-wife. Do you want to see her in danger? If not, you'll stop attacking me and you will allow me to steal the golden necklace of the red lion. So it could also serve like a subject or topic of threatening someone in a conflict situation. So every single instance within the context it is very fun to come up with interpretations, taking a look at that instance within the context. Let's see, Canticle says, you sound like your ex-girlfriend did last night when you get hit. And that adds a lot of flavor and color to the interactions. It feels like the character is actually alive, because that's what a lot of people sometimes they feel disheartened or they lose enthusiasm when they are playing solo RPGs. And let's say Canticle says, social prompts during combat. Never tried that. It's a good thing, especially if you have characters with abilities that they use like provoke or mess up with their character with their opponent's minds. Have you seen the movie? What's the animated film where Batman and Superman appear? It's called Batman and Superman Apocalypse, I think. But you basically have Batman trolling behind a rock, and that's how he wins the fight. The entire fight against Atomic Man, I think it was Atomic Man. Batman hides behind a bunch of rubble, and he starts messing with Atomic Man's mind, like, "Oh yeah, you're always going to be second class compared to Superman. Superman is so powerful, and you're like fake Superman." And starts messing with his mind. So that's social attacks in a battle situation, and he gets him like out of control. He misses some tactical elements, and that gives a chance for Superman, if I remember correctly, to strike Atomic Man. So a lot of people say, "Wow, Batman completely destroyed Atomic Man just by trolling behind a rock." So that's a perfect example of social prompts used during combat. And sometimes it can turn into a negotiation or matters of diplomacy. You never know. Sometimes the enemies offer some information in exchange. And let's say Beyond Fantasy speaks, Batman is the Sherlock Holmes of he's the detective, the greatest detective of superheroes. Well, some could argue some other superheroes, but he's the most famous at the very least. And funny enough, Batman started as a complete copy of the Shadow. Batman started out with guns. Not many people know this, but Batman started out with guns. And he was a complete. The entire first Batman comic book is an absolute ripoff of the Shadow, of the that other superhero that is not as famous. The Shadow, from the movie, you remember? Yeah, I'm not joking. Take a look at the first Batman comic book in history. It's a complete ripoff, absolute ripoff of the first Shadow comic book. And like I was saying, some players may feel, like I said, disheartened. They are about to start their solo RPGs, and they think, no, it feels like I'm playing by myself. But because you're using the oracles, the tables, the generators to bring forth the personalities, the motivations, the agendas, the prompts of all of those non-player characters or emulated player characters, you're creating artificial personalities with their motivations, with their drives. And it's incredible. You have just created something out of nothing. Canticle speaks, an example of industry making something better of an original. Don't hear about that often. Industry making something better of an original. Yes, yes. I'm not exactly sure, and that is debatable. But if I remember correctly, the Oreo cookies, I think they were also a ripoff of some other thing. The original, I don't remember the name of the original cookie, but it was pretty much an Oreo. But the Oreo had better marketing, more leverage, new people, and they pretty much stole the concept. Although I highly, highly recommend that people do not eat Oreos. If you take a look at the chemicals within the Oreos, YouTube, this is science fiction. This is not true. If you take a look at the chemicals within the Oreos, you will find some very disturbing things. But, but yes, that's pretty much it when it comes to applying the results of oracles, tables, generators to emulate non-player characters and player characters, taking the context and that very instance, that particular combat round, the turn, applying it to your interpretation the way it's supposed to be. And that's why it's so difficult to stop companies from messing with good stories. Yes, because it has gotten worse throughout the years. Although people are starting to wake up, there are so many restrictions, and the entire DEI, BlackRock, um, all of that, Sweet Baby Inc., all of those crappy organizations, they are now completely exposed, and how they have ruined so many lives, jobs, intellectual properties. People are aware of that. CD Project USAD is going to stop. Well, it depends because they are part of the same divide and conquer mafia. In order to avoid triggering the algorithm, You know that there are certain saviors. Let's call them Donald and Elon. Donald and Elon. If you take a look at what Donald was saying about a certain thing, a certain thing that they wanted people to take, he called himself the father of that thing. And then right now, oh yes, we are removing everyone from the uh, world organization. It's always divide and conquer. It's like a circus. Or will it just go farther underground? Uh-huh. And so people are more aware of that. CD Project Red, they lost, as I understand it, like half of their people. And the studio behind the Stray video game, from the cat Stray, no more. We'll just make our own. Don't take their toxic things. Take our own toxic things, right? Well, just in the what was the name? What was I saying? Yes, CD Project Red. They lost like half of their people, and they created a new studio. And I think the same thing is happening with the studio behind the Stray video game, where you control the cat Stray. They started going full woke, and now half of the studio already left the company, or more than half. They are creating their own studio. So yes, it truly presents an obstacle when it comes to truly creating good stories out of nowhere. And now, before we wrap this up, beyond fantasy, Canticle, do you have some other thoughts on emulating player characters and non-player characters, or some questions, or any insights, whatever? Because this is truly, as always, a complex subject. You can really dig very deep, and you start finding more and more nuances and things that you can employ in your solo campaigns, solo adventures, etc. When I first started to use Mythic, I was at least not certain or not sure how to emulate player characters, but then it all started to click. Emulating and role playing kind of overlap. And that's the thing that some people find it a bit difficult to understand, that they don't they feel as if they are playing against themselves, a bit like when you play chess, and you play chess against yourself, but you play chess against yourself because you want to improve at the game. But in tabletop RPGs, when you are emulating non-player characters, player characters, you're actually creating those fictional personas, an artificial intelligence made out of paper and prompts, and they surprise you. And Canticle says sometimes a non-player character just boils down to a social pattern, or the echo or shadow of the feeling you get from a kind of social encounter. I have serious trouble empathizing with emulating non-player characters. Yes, it depends on the things that they have to do, because if they are not believable enough, they look a bit more like, almost like tools, right? Because you don't develop feelings for them, and you really need to get into the adventure as if you are actually there. Otherwise, the love interests, the friends. Let's say, how do you emulate without turning the session into a giant conversation? Well, we're still talking about solo role-playing games beyond fantasy. So taking that into consideration, you make your rolls to see what is inside a room. Typical room situation. You go inside of a bunker. You go inside of a haunted mansion. You go inside of a crypt. You go inside of a building and in the city, and you obtain the result of a human, depending on the table that you are using, a human or an elf or whatever. No, and don't you don't need to have conversations. You can roll to determine how that person reacts, their agendas, their attitudes, the agenda that they display, rather. Canticle speaks, I think that I tend to switch perspective completely, compartmentalize my role playing into the different characters. Then my main protagonist becomes a non-player character. Uh-huh. And that could also happen when you are emulating, when you, for example, instead of playing a single player character, you are role playing as various player characters, like typical dungeon crawl classic situation where you have like 4 or 6 player characters at the same time. It almost feels like an NPC, but you are still describing their actions. That's the main difference. And so there were some people about a couple of years back that couldn't understand that difference. They said, well, pretty much every character is a player character in a role playing game. But no, when it comes to a player, he does not control the action of the non player characters. Let's say Beyond Fantasy speaks. What is the difference between emulation and solo play? I'm still new to the medium. Okay. Emulation is part of solo play. Emulating a game master means that you don't have a game master, but using an oracle or a generator, you are emulating a game master. It's as if you are creating an artificial intelligence game master. And when you emulate non-player characters and player characters, it's as if those non-player characters and player characters have an intelligence or a mind of their own. You are emulating them. So that's basically it beyond fantasy. The solo play consists of emulation. You couldn't have a solo play without emulation. And it's understandable that so some of these concepts become a bit murky because the many of the emulators generators, they don't go into the more specific aspects of the emulation. And like I said, this has the origin of Tana's work, the Mythic Game Master emulator. Again, amazing emulator. I have it. I use it. The second edition, excellent. I highly recommend it. But Tana, like I said, the author has never has never role played in a tabletop RPG. It was always a conversation. What do I see inside of the room? Can I use my spell? Mr. Game Master, is the chest closed or open? Does it have traps? Can I open the door? You see, and that's what got some people confused on how to use solo roleplay. But it's actually very easy. You describe your action instead of, is the door opened or closed? No, I look at the door to see if it is opened or closed. Is the strange rock marked with red symbols? I pick up the strange rock and examine it to see if it has red symbols. Do I recognize the man that is inside of the cabin? I think back to see if I recognize the man inside of the cabin. You see, and that's what gets you going. That's what plunges you into the magic of role playing. When you get into that mindset of actually role playing and not having a conversation, the magic happens. You've seen it beyond fantasy. You've seen it. It's incredible. But I think that pretty much wraps it up. Oh, and for anyone that is watching, Beyond Fantasy and we are starting a new campaign. We are starting the very simple system, quick and classic. If you want to participate, we will be playing about an hour or an hour and a half once a week. It's going to be incredible. It's super cool campaign in the world or setting of Astoria, a sandbox campaign with limitless possibilities. So many curses and magic and tyrants and adventure, ruins, tomb scripts. Or if someone else, perhaps you're not into fantasy, maybe you want to play something sci-fi, we're also open to that. But right now, we're considering that. So definitely keep it in mind. It is a free campaign. As a professional game master, I'm not charging for that one because I will be streaming that and monetizing that in my channel. But I think that wraps things up. Unless anyone else has some sort of question or further thoughts, I think we can wrap this up. So thank you, Cantico, Beyond Fantasy. Thanks to everyone else for watching this solo-focused live stream, giving some tools and thoughts on how to emulate non-player characters and player characters. And thank you so much to everyone else who is supporting the channel, who is going the extra mile. If anyone else wishes to further support the channel, consider joining as a member using the super thanks button. Like, subscribe, take a look at the information, the description, the pinned comment. This has been your host, Abraham L. Jaguar, a professional game master. And remember, it is better to roleplay and fail in character than not to roleplay and fail as a player. Once again, thank you, Cantico, Beyond Fantasy. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your evening, day, wherever you are. And see you later.